Welcome to ForexTV.com. Today's Tuesday, June 24th. I'm Remy Hoki for New York Forex Market Buzz. The US dollar is lower against the euro and pound on the day, but higher against the yen in afternoon trade. Taking a quick look at the latest headlines from the CP News Desk, markets had plenty to digest this morning with the release of historically low U.S. Consumer confidence data, a steep drop in the Richmond Fed Manufacturing Survey, and a decline in the Case-Shiller U.S. Home Price Index. The U.S. Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index for June tumbled to levels not seen since 1992 at 50.4, led by a near 10-point decline in the present situation component. The previous month's reading of 57.2 was revised upwards to 58.1. The three-month average for consumer confidence is now at 57.1, down from 62.3 last month. And the expectations category fell to 41, down from 47.3 in May. And the present situation component fell to 64.5 from 74.2 in May. And inflation expectations remained at 7.7%, a record high. Meanwhile, the S&P's Case-Shiller Home Price Index continued to deteriorate in April, as the 20-city composite index posted a record annual decline of 15.3%. The Case-Shiller Index has fallen every month since peaking in July of 2006. The month-to-month decline in home prices was 1.36 compared to the 2.17 loss in the previous month. And the 20-city composite is currently at a level of 169.85, while the 10-city composite posted an annual loss of 16.35%. Meanwhile, overnight data released included UK home mortgage approvals. The British Bankers Association said mortgage approvals fell to a new series low of 27,968 in May. This afternoon, I'm joined by Stephen Leahy, president of Back Bay FX. Good afternoon, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Remy. Thanks as always for having me on.
Well, thank you very much for joining us ahead of tomorrow's Fed decision. Now, ahead of the Fed rate announcement scheduled for tomorrow afternoon at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time, and of course the statement post-Fed decision, we're seeing the dollar weaker against the euro. Earlier, we saw the dollar fall below 156 against the euro, but has gained again in afternoon trade. But we know that the majors have been range-bound, so given the possible outcome of tomorrow's FOMC statement, what is your short-term forecast for euro-dollar?
A short-term forecast for us involving the U.S. dollar in general, we do expect overall that there's going to be some dollar strength. In terms of euro-dollar in particular, kind of our least favorite currency to short dollar versus euro. We think that there's a couple different currency pairs that if you're going to play a long dollar bias, which is what we've got in the short term here, that probably a better bet is to be trading that long dollar versus either short sterling, short Aussie, short New Zealand dollars. For us, we feel that kind of fundamentally speaking, Euroland has as good, if not better, a chance of increasing their rates as the U.S., and so we feel there's no kind of bias there. So we're not interested in necessarily going long euro dollars here, or to tell you the truth, not even short. Like I said, we like playing a long dollar view using some other currency pairs.
Okay, Stephen. Well, while we're in a holding pattern ahead of tomorrow's FOMC statement, today's Conference Board's consumer confidence plunged, and the S&P Case-Shiller Home Price Index fell to a record low. But while we're focused on inflation and also the central bank outlook, let's take a look at the UK pound. We know that over in the UK, inflation is above the target rate for the BOE, and long-term cable does look bearish. But we're seeing choppy action in intraday trade for cable against the U.S. currency, while euro sterling is trending higher at a 5-day high. So short-term and also longer-term, what is your recommendation for the pound?
Again, using sterling, we like shorting sterling versus U.S. dollar. Again, using a U.S. dollar strong scenario, and we think sterling's coming off here on a fundamental basis. Also, I think we might be able to pull a chart here showing a one-year period of sterling dollar. To us, we keep seeing lower highs and the low level at about 194, maybe just about 194. We've been using the intraday volatility that you've mentioned on sterling dollar as opportunities to short sterling. Every time it gets up around the 1.97 mark, we're right there right now. A day and a half ago, we got up above 198. Use that to short there as well. And so our bias on sterling dollar is certainly lower, but we do feel like there seems to be a bottom putting in place around the 194.50 level. You mentioned euro sterling. To us, again, as I mentioned, we feel that Euroland has a decent shot of raising rates sooner rather than later. In the UK, we think they're going to have to cut rates on a fundamental basis. Therefore, to us, euro sterling moves higher. From a technical basis, we hit a level of about 0.8090, just below 81 the figure. A number of months ago, I wouldn't doubt that we will retest those highs, which gives room for about 180 points higher on euro sterling from this time.
Okay, Stephen, now that we've covered the euro and cable, let's move on to one of the other majors of the yen. Dollar yen has been consolidating and has been also range bound. So in the short term, what is your strategy for the yen against the dollar and also against the euro?
Interesting. You mentioned that dollar yen has been kind of consolidating. We've seen very little volatility in dollar yen in the last week or so. Previously, it had really gone on a bull run with dollar strengthening significantly versus yen, but as you mentioned, in the last couple of days, a week or so, really consolidating. In the short term, we may even have a chart that I forwarded on to you. We took a intraday look at this thing. We used some typical Bollinger Bands as we priced the thing out. Again, I keep seeing lower highs and lower lows, so we're looking to short dollar yen here. For our clients, we actually just put on trade this morning, short right from about the 108 level or so, and just using a basic chart in terms of stop loss and take profit and profit maximization, risk-reward rules. We'll probably stop ourselves out if this gets above 108.30. We're targeting down in the low 107s. We think we can get below 107.20 or so sometime in the next 12 hours.
Okay, well, while we're looking at the yen, let's also take a look at the commodity currencies, starting out with the Aussie dollar. We saw the Aussie rally today against the U.S. currency at nearly a 2-week high. But short term for the Aussie against both the U.S. currency as well as the yen, what is your strategy?
Once again, we like using, in terms of betting on U.S. dollar strength, we prefer shorting Aussie dollar versus trying to short euro dollar. And so we, again, we keep playing kind of short term, but short ideas on Australian dollar. Specifically, we use New Zealand dollar as well. And again, in terms of the Aussie dollar versus Japanese yen, one of the things we've seen in the last few weeks or so is there's definitely a strengthening of the carry trades using Australian dollar, sterling dollar, or New Zealand as a interest as a long leg of the carry trade, which to us actually sets up something interesting. We've seen there seems to be a bit of a disconnect, I guess I should say. In general, we've seen the carry trades be very closely associated with U.S. equities, and we've seen U.S. equities falling off in the last few weeks, while the carry trade seems to be getting some legs to it. That to us tells us a lot more about Japanese yen weakness rather than necessarily strength in the long side of the carry trade currencies.
Okay, Stephen, and last but not least, before we wrap it up for today's interview, if you could give us your top trade recommendations.
Sure, got a couple points here. You and I last week spoke about a idea on a fundamental basis of being short Swiss francs versus long Norwegian krona. We entered the trade last week at about 4.98. It's holding at about 4.92 now. Not much of a intraday trading currency pair, just kind of a long-term fundamental view on Switzerland versus Norwegian kroner. Also, in the immediate and short term, we do have on a short dollar yen trade that, again, kind of we see as the next 12 to 24 hours playing out. And finally, in terms of those who are looking for interesting ideas to trade, obviously there will be the Fed minutes coming out tomorrow afternoon, and we are looking for any use of the word currencies or dollar. To us, no matter what they say, by using those words, it implicitly means strong dollar, and so we play strong U.S. dollars on that announcement. And finally, for those who like to trade around data events, we've got some interesting numbers coming out of New Zealand, both on Wednesday and Thursday evenings at 6:45 p.m. East Coast time. New Zealand numbers coming out, current account data on Wednesday, and their GDP numbers on Thursday. We will look to short New Zealand versus dollar on both those announcements.
Okay, Stephen, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for your insight into the Forex marketplace.
Thanks for having me, Remy.
This has been your Forex Market Buzz with Stephen Leahy, president of Back Bay FX. I'm Remy Hokie. Join us later this afternoon, 4 p.m. exchange, right here on ForexTV.com.